But anyway, so see how this got shifted up to the D. Now this got shifted up to the D, but it's not going to be exactly the same shift up because now it's D Dorian. So notice what happened over here is the numbers have changed over here because so if you think about this as a dial, notice what happened. This shifted up from an absolute note perspective, but we have a different shift on this dial, which is the absolute relative position perspective, because this didn't shift up to an Ionian, it shifted up to a D Dorian. So that means it's starting on the 2 now. This is starting on the 2, whereas up here, this C was starting on the 1. So you can see what the dials are, right? You've got these three things that are kind of mapped up against each other. That's what you get. That's what you're allowed to have by mapping out the relative position. So then from an absolute note perspective, we just moved up from C or 60 up to D. But then from a relative Nashville number perspective, this dial didn't shift up the same way because we didn't shift this up to the 1 right here. We kept it at 2. And so now you're mapping out the Nashville number system from the 2. So that allows you to rotate it around. And then if I rotated it from the Dorian, snap it up another nod to the Phrygian. So now I'm going to move it up here. Now, as I go to the Phrygian, note what I'm not going to do is if you're going to map this out in a DAW system or in a database, you don't want to go from the Ionian to the Dorian and then the Dorian to the Phrygian. You want to go from whatever you started writing the music in and then map each of the 7 modes to that perspective. Why? Because the Dorian has already been distorted, right? Meaning the Dorian snapped into place and these 2 4s are different than what we started with. So what I want to do is say, if I wrote it in Ionian, I want to go back to Ionian and turn the dial up 2. So meaning this 1 will be going up 2 dials up to 3. This 2 will be 3, 4, 5. But then this 1.5 is the problem because the 1.5 will be 2, 3.5, which lands you in an area that doesn't exist. So it would have to snap up to 4. Whereas you'd end up with a different set of problems if you did this. It'll distort the music more than it needs to be. So as I rotate through the dial, I'm not building the next node on the prior set of information. I'm building it from the root. Each of them are building up from the root. So this is going 2 up. This Phrygian is moving 2 up on the dial from the original key the song was in, the Ionian. Now note that I built this out from the perspective of writing a song in the Ionian. But if you're in a database system, you should be able to say, I'm going to write the song in whatever key I want, whatever collection of notes I want, and even possibly writing multiple parts of the song in different collection of notes and from a different modal perspective, right? And then it should be able to the database program should be able to map out shifting the entire song from that perspective, whatever you started from, or each individual piece of that song should be able to be rotatable and so on. But anyways, it moves it up from a 1 to a 3, and then the 2.5 got shifted to 4 because there is no 3.5, and then the 4, and then the 4. And then if I go over here, we could say what got mapped out on this side. Now from the dials on the left, what happened? Well, we were on the C, and we're on this C, and we shifted it up to the E. But we didn't shift up the relative positions from a modal standpoint the same. This dial didn't shift up exactly the same because I didn't make this the 1. This is now the 3 because we're starting on the 3rd, the relative 3rd, which is the E. And so therefore the pattern that I see going up is not going to be the exact same pattern as we saw from the perspective of the Ionian. All right, and then we go back, and so then if I go back here again, we can say, okay, so then if I go to, what did I just do? The Phrygian, the Lydian, same thing. We shifted up from the Ionian to the Lydian. So now we've gone up to the Lydian, And we map that out over here. Boom. And so now if I map that out, now we went from the C up to an F. But this dial is now not at the 1. We're starting at 4. 1 is going to be down here at the C because we're shifting up. And then we go from the Lydian to the Mixolydian. So once again, I'm pulling from the original thing. The song was written in Ionian. I shift the dial up 4, which means it goes from Ionian to the Mixolydian. Meaning if it was a 1, this was a 1, it got shifted up 4 dials to get to 5. 1 plus 4 is 5. And then this got mapped out. So if I go over here, we say, okay, now this, from the DAW perspective, this dial got shifted up from an absolute note perspective to here, but all the relative positions are not the same because I shifted this dial over here to have that G not be relative position 1 from a Nashville number system, but relative position 5 from a Nashville number system. So it's going to be mapped out from the perspective then of the Mixolydian. And then if we go to this one, Aeolian, so now I started with the Aeolian, Ionian, and I shifted it up 6 knobs to get to the Aeolian, or meaning I was on the Ionian and I shifted it up 5 knobs to get to the 6, which is Nashville number 6, which is the Aeolian. Now remember, if I'm on the Aeolian, I still have the same numbers 1 through 7 plus the ones in the ocean, but the 6 in this center point should be the lowest note. If it's A, then the 6 is represented in A. The A should be lower, right, than the Ionian. The Ionian is a C. The A should be lower in pitch than the C. Whereas if I was playing in Ionian, this 1 would be lower in pitch than the 6. That's all you need to know if you're writing your song. If I'm playing in the around the 6th note, which would be the Aeolian, I just need to know it's just going to be 1 through 7 still, plus the ones in the ocean, but the 6 is going to be the lowest one in pitch for each of these rows that we're going to be playing in, allowing me to see everything much more cleanly in one location. So I can see if something's going up or down by the numbers, because there's only 1 through 7, plus the notes that are in the ocean, right? And then if I go over here, I can say, how do we map this out here? Well, this dial, we shifted it up to A, but this dial, we didn't shift this dial up to A. This dial is at a 6 because it's the related 6. Therefore, the shape going up is going to be changed from the perspective of the Aeolian relative positions as opposed to the Ionian. And then finally, the Locrian. Most people wouldn't shift it to the Locrian, but you could. Idea being the same. You go from, you're on the Ionian, you shift it up 6 to get to the 7th node, which is the Locrian. This was a 1, now it's a 7, for example, and the idea is the same. So we have here then that we shifted up to the B, from the C to the B, but this dial didn't shift exactly the same because we're looking at the relative position of 7. So when we map out the distance from there, it's from the distance of the Locrian intervals, not the Ionian intervals or any of the others. So hopefully, so this is how I think normal music, like people just writing their music down, would write it most easily. If you didn't have all the baggage, this is how you would write it down, I think, most easily for most people. And you can get more complicated, like I say, by assigning each part of your music, like a jazz player might do, to each modal perspective that you're looking at that part of music from, and possibly each collection of notes you're looking at that part from. And then you should be able to, like a Rubik's Cube, take the 2 dials of relative position and shift what you've played, either the whole tune or the pieces of the tune, to all 12 collections of relative modal perspectives, Ionian, Dorian, whatever, through all 12 collections of notes, or change the dial to all modal perspectives. Rotate the modal perspective that you're looking from. That to me is just, that seems just clear that that's what the DAW systems should have the capacity to do, and clear that that seems like the most efficient way for most people to jot down their musical ideas.